Nomenoe was the first Duke of Brittany from 846 to his death. He is the Breton patriae, and to Breton nationalists he is known as death. Origins. He was the second son of Count Erispoe of Pau, king of the Brouwerock, and younger brother of Count Rilwa on arrival on 3 of Pau. Rise and titulature under Louis the Pious. After a general rebellion which had enveloped the entire Carolingian Empire was put down, a general assembly was held at Ingelheim in May 831. It was probably that the Emperor Louis the Pious appointed Nominoe, a Breton, to rule the Bretons. Jeanne of Prum in his famous Chronicon writes, inaccurately for the year 837, that Mermanus rex Britanum morace Nominoeo apud Ingelheim ab imperator Ducatus ipsius gentis tradita. Mormon, king of the Bretons, died and Nominoe was created Duke of that same people by the Emperor at Ingelheim. Nominoe was a staunch ally of Louis the Pious until the Emperor's death in 840. He supported Louis in the several civil wars of the 830s, and he supported the monastery of Breton Abbey, even ordering the monks to pray for Louis in light of the emperor's strife. Nominoe's power base was in the Vanities, and 2 charters refer to him as Count of Vannes, though it is unknown when that title was held, be it as early as 819 or as late as 834. Nominoe may not have possessed any land outside Vannes, and his ability to gather revenue in Breton-speaking territories was probably no greater than any other aristocrat of those regions. His chief source of income after he broke with his overlord was plunder from raids into Frankish territory and from the despoliation of churches. He did have the political authority to exact payment in the form of land from a man who had murdered his follower Catware. The title Duke of Brittany is primarily a chronicler's invention of the 10th century. Nominoe never held a title from the emperor, who refers to him in charters as merely Fidelis, faithful one, or as Mrs. Imperatoris, imperial emissary, which was probably the title he was granted at Ingelheim. In Breton charters, Nominoe was known inconsistently by several titles from February 833 until his death: Nominoe magistro in Britanniam, Nominoe possidente Britanniam, gubernante Nominoe totam Britanniam, Nominoe principi in Britannia, regnant Nominoe in Britannia, Nominoe duce in Britannia, Nominoeus dux, Nominoeus princeps, Nominogius Brito. Loyalty and falling out with Charles the Bull. The relations between Nominoe and Charles the Bull, Louis's successor after 840, were initially amicable. In the midst of a revolt of his men in Neustria, Charles sent from Le Mans to see if Nominoe would submit to him in the spring of 841, and Nominoe agreed to do so. It is clear from the wording of the account of this event in Nithard that Nominoe was too powerful to be compelled to submit. Later in 841 he rebuffed the overtures of the new emperor, Lothair I, who claimed Neustria. Nominoe remained loyal to Charles throughout the next year, even making a donation in arms for the king to the Abbey of Breton on the 25th of January 842. Breton soldiers, as well as Gascons, certainly took part in the military show of the Oaths of Strasbourg. In the summer of 843, Lothair, or perhaps his supporter Lambert II of Nantes, succeeded in persuading Nominoe to abandon Charles and go over to the emperor. Nominoe was thereafter a constant enemy of Charles and his authority in Neustria, often acting in concert with Lothair, Lambert, and Pepin II of Aquitaine. Breton troops fought under Lambert in Neustria, and when, in June 844, Charles was besieging Toulouse, Nominoe raided into Maine and plundered the territory. In November 843, Charles had marched as far as Rennes to compel Breton Breton submission, but to no effect. At the Synod of Utes in October 844, presided over by Charles's uncle Drogo of Metz, the bishops sent orders to Nomenoe, Lambert, and Pepin commanding them to renew the fealty to Charles or be prepared to accept military consequences. Lambert and Pepin complied, but Nomenoe ignored the Frankish bishops. However, some Bretons had connived against him with Charles, and the king tried to enter Brittany in support of the defectors, but without success. He was defeated at the Battle of Ballon just north of Redon across the Vilaine on the 22nd of November 845. It is probable that in the Vanities Nominoe's authority had been weakened after his split with Charles in 843, and Lupus of Ferrières reports unrest in Brittany during this period. In 844 and 847, according to the Annales Bertiniani, Nomenoe made war on the Vikings, renewed loyalty and second rebellion. In summer 846, Charles marched on Brittany and again took no military action, instead coming to peace with Nomenoe and exchanging oaths. The details of the peace arrangements are unknown, but Prudentius of Troyes uses the title Duke for the first time in this context, and this may indicate that Nomenoe was created Duke of the Bretons in return for recognizing Charles's lordship. As another part of the agreement, Nomenoe had Charles remove Lambert from Nantes and put him in power in Sens further away. By Christmas time, Nomenoe's Bretons were raiding Neustria, this time near Bayeux. Again, this was probably instigated by Lothair the Charles, and the brother Louis the German met at Meissen in February 847 and agreed to send orders to Nomenoe and Pepin to desist from making war on Charles. Nomenoe, probably being paid by Lothair, did not in fact desist, neither did Pepin. In two campaigns in the spring and then fall of 849, Charles was in Aquitaine and Nomenoe took the opportunity to raid Neustria. Charles re-established Lambert in Nantes after Nomenoe invaded Anjou. In 850, Lambert had renewed the friendship with Nomenoe and together were raiding Maine with unspeakable fury, according to the Chronicon. Fontainebleau. In August, Charles marched on Rennes, again avoided fighting, and installed garrisons there and at Nantes. Immediately after he left, Lambert and Nomenoe defeated the garrisons and captured the new Count of Nantes, Amalric. On the 7th of March 851, Nomenoe died near Vendôme while ravaging the Nantais and Anjou. He was buried at Redon Abbey. By his wife Argentala, Nomenoe left a son named Erispo, who succeeded him. Nomenoe was thus the founder of a political tradition in Brittany which had not hitherto existed, though his charters did not mimic Carolingian ones. His successors would imitate the legitimizing Carolingian language in theirs. Deposition of the bishops. In 849, at a place called Coatlu, Nomenoe held a synod whereat he deposed the 5 Breton bishops of Valais, St. Paul, Vence, Quimper, and Dol. The charges he levelled against them are unknown. Pope Leo IV sent a letter to Nomenoe and the bishops informing him that the depositions could only be enacted by a panel of 12 bishops with 72 witnesses. The later popes Benedict II and Nicholas I believed that Nomenoe had forced the bishops to admit to crimes they had not committed and that their depositions were thus invalid. A Frankish synod of 850 held at either Angers or Tours accused Nomenoe of simony by unlawfully removing bishops and replacing them with mercenarii. These mercenarii were excommunicated, as indicated by an epistle of the Synod of Savoniers in 859 sent to what remained of the Breton Church in communion with the Archdiocese of Tours. Nomenoe sacked Rennes and Nantes, replacing the new Frankish bishop of the latter with his own nominee. Susanus was deposed in Vence and replaced by Curantgen. Salicon was deposed in Dole, but his replacement is unknown. At Quimper, Felix was replaced by Anawetan, and at St. Paul, Clauduan replaced Garnobrius. The two bishops of Valais, first Reithwalter and then Mahenne, are very obscure figures. The bishop of Nantes, whom Nominoe succeeded in removing for about a year, was Actard. His replacement was the obscure Gislard. In the end, the Synod of Coëtlou and the bringing of the bishoprics of Rennes and Nantes into the Breton fold meant that the Church of Brittany was an actively independent ecclesiastic polity from its nominal metropolitan, the Metropolitan of Tours. Succession. At his death, Nomenoe was succeeded by his son Erispo. Nomenoe was buried at Redon Abbey.